to break it down or to make it simple, what were some of the toughest times that you
Yeah,
experienced?
probably early on the toughest was mental, and I don't know if this is a thing, but we're at altitude, so around like 3,000, 4,000 meters. Woke up to this like heavy breathing outside my tent. I only had the mesh over top, so I didn't actually have the fly on.
Yeah.
And I was like, I yelled across to Hugo in his tent and was like, Hugo's, I think he's a bear, I don't know what to do. And so
Maybe they don't want to do the PCT, but they want to undertake something that's a massive goal that perhaps they think they can't achieve. What would be your advice?
be prepared. No. What would I say? Take it step by step, look at it. Don't look at it as a whole picture. I know there's very cliche, but like look at it as how you actually do it.
Welcome along to episode 27. I'm Cam. I'm the host of the Lifting in Life podcast. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology. I'm a personal trainer and I also work in IT. Today, I'm joined by Oliver Missen, or more commonly known as Ollie. He's my mate from back home in Whakatane, and he completed the Pacific Crest Trail, also known as the PCT. The PCT is a trail in the States along the west coast that extends from the Mexican border all the way up to the Canadian border. He completed the trail back in 2019, and I've never had the chance to sit down and chat to him properly about it. As you can imagine, he learnt a lot along the way, and he also had some encounters with bears, snakes, and mountain lions. As always, I appreciate you tuning into the podcast, and any support you can show goes a long way, and it also helps me continue getting these awesome people on. So whether you can like, subscribe, leave a comment, whatever it is, it really helps a lot. Thanks heaps, and remember, you make you. Anyway, we're live, Mr. Oliver Missen. It's a pleasure to have you on, man. Honestly, like ever since you walked the PCT back in, I think it was 2019, right?
Yeah. 2019. Yeah.
Yeah, I stalked your Instagram today. I didn't just remember that, but I've been wanting to chat to you. I think it was I can't remember what the occasion was, but we were at Myrie's in Brooklyn, and it was someone's birthday, and you and I, like, we got chatting in the kitchen, and you, like, were telling me a little bit about it, like the story with the mountain lion and shit. And I was just like, man, like, I need to talk to this guy properly. So I'm very stoked to have you on today, man.
Oh, thank you for asking me on. Yeah. My memory's a bit blurry about that particular evening, but yeah, no, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure I feel good.
I'm sure that there were many evenings amongst that.
We don't need to talk about that.
But how long did the actual? I'm keen to maybe start with some details for people that like don't know what the PCT is at all. So I think we'll start off with, because how long did it take you? Maybe we'll start there.
Well, it took me just under 5 months. So we left on the 5th of May and so we left the Mexican border on the 5th of May and reached the Canadian border on the 1st of October. So just under 5 months.
And it's, what was it, 4,000 Ks? I Googled that today, like 4,200. I got it there. Is that right?
Anything on top of that if you want, but yeah, that's
Damn, bro. And there's obviously a lot to unpack throughout this journey. So where I want to start, I feel like it's the most obvious one. Why did you undertake such a massive journey? I understand that before it you were like doing some like tramping, guiding and stuff down south, so you're already kind of in that space a little bit, but what compelled you to undertake such a massive journey?
Yeah, I think I had got really comfortable outdoors, being a guide and kind of doing stuff around the Southern Alps and exploring that. And I got to a point where I wanted a bit of a challenge. I think I felt felt a bit bored. And also when you're a guide, you work the summers, right? So then you have the winters off essentially if you're going to go back into another season. And usually that's the year before I had travelled, and I thought, well, what could I do if I wanted to do another in the 6 months. And I was talking to people who had done it themselves. I met a guy who had done it, and pretty much I was just like, went home and researched it that night. I was like, I want to do that. And it's a bit of a process from there because it's become very popular since movies and books like Wild have come out. That I think 5,000 people start it each year, and maybe 500 finish it or 1,000 finish it. It's yeah.
So it's only about 10%.
Yeah, and
that
then
finish
you
it.
have to get a permit. Well, you're meant to get a permit. Start. So then that's a whole process to try and get your slot to start the day that you so you've got to apply online and wait in a queue and all that sort of carry on. So yeah, bit of a process there. But yeah, I guess to answer your question, I saw it as an amazing challenge, and I also thought, and I remember thinking this at the time, it would be a cool thing to be able to like point at a map and be like, oh yeah, I walked that chunk of the
Yeah, and that's a massive chunk as well.
and so I thought that would be a good story if nothing else.
And there's lots. Well, maybe there's two things. The first thing I want to say to that is that most of the time when people are bored and they're not enjoying their current situation, they normally like maybe move towns or something. They normally don't walk like 4,000 k's. But I mean, I guess that meant you weren't bored for 5 months.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
what I was going to ask next is, what made you choose the PCT? Because there's a bunch of trails, right? There's like the
Yeah,
Appalachian Trail, or like there's
I guess
ones like a
I
bunch through
had
Europe.
heard, yeah, sorry. I had heard I had met someone who had done it, right? So I knew what the trail um was like. I also quite liked the fact it was quite clear, and the fact you start on the Mexican border and you end on the Canadian border. I thought that kind of achievement was quite catchy and quite a cool thing to see.
Yeah,
But also just the scenery, right? Like I had seen videos on YouTube, I had watched them, and I'd just seen, going through the Sierra Nevada, from the deserts to the mountains in Washington. It just looked it was extremely varied in its landscape, and the other ones tend to be a bit more same, if you like, the way.
yeah.
So I guess I like the variety. And I had, yeah, and I had just, I guess, researched it, and I had always kind of fixated on that one.
In 2017, me and Chloe went to the States and we went to Yosemite Valley.
Yeah, yeah,
So we like did a bit of we actually did the Pacific Coast Highway,
oh yeah,
but except right by Big Sur, there was a massive slip. So we couldn't go and see it. And that's arguably like the most scenic part
oh
of
no,
it. Yeah. So we like did that and then we went to Yosemite Valley and then I saw you doing that a couple years later and I just like we got a tiny slice of what the scenery was like. So when I saw that you were doing that, man, I was super keen to see what all the scenery looked like there.
it's actually incredible. Like especially through Yosemite, around like Tahoe, the lakes, Northern California, and Central California and stuff as well. It's just absolutely amazing. The trail goes kind of close to Yosemite, but you kind of can dip off, and we caught a ride into Yosemite for a couple of days and checked it out, and then jumped into the trail. But yeah, incredible place.
Yeah. Now, where I want to go to next, I know there's lots of like superficial stuff and kind of deep stuff that we can talk about. So maybe we'll now let's start off a little bit more superficial. Really, just get into it. So, what did like undertaking such a big journey teach you about preparation? Because from the little snippets that you were putting up on Instagram, I saw you were like getting food dropped off at places. You had to swap out your shoes multiple times along the way, and so planning for a trip like that without having obviously you had a bit of guide experience, but you hadn't walked for 5 months straight before. How did you even start to begin planning for the big trip?
I'll preface this by saying, I mean, especially before the PCT, I'm a shit. I'm shit at prepping for anything. Like I am very much see what happens and then deal with the consequences of my actions, but never take ownership for them.
Yeah, that's a
Um,
future Ollie problem.
yeah, I always think that that's a future problem that happens. And I guess when I was guiding, I could see, I kind of learned, especially around weather and stuff, how things can change, and you always need to kind of have a backup plan. So, but I did it with my mate Hugo, so it was definitely more on the prepared side. I was definitely more on, we'll see what happens, and that ends you in some pretty uncomfortable circumstances. I think if you follow my logic on that one. And I paid for it. For example, I didn't prepare enough food for a leg of the trip, and we still had 26 miles, 30 something kilometers,
Yeah.
40 kilometers one day, and the place we were going to was a small village, like a small town, and the shop closed at 2, the cafe closed at 2 p.m. So I had to get there before 2 p.m. and do 40 kilometers. So I got up at 5 a.m. in the morning. My mate had bought a bit more food, so he was fine, but I didn't want to take his. So I had one muesli bar left, and I just got up, put my headphones in, and just marched into town and got there in time for a burger. So and some food. And then I actually 2 burgers and fries and 2 drinks. That's that was kind of how it went. But yeah, so I learned along the way that it does pay to make sure you've got enough, and it's definitely better to over. Yeah, but I still have this thing in my brain, I think, where I love to get by on the bare minimum and just like, I'm working on that as a word. It did
minimalist.
It also taught me a lot around making sure you've kind of got those bare essentials, I guess. So water, warmth, food, shelter, and it's amazing how much when you don't have one of those and you need it,
how much
joy it brings when you get it. There were days where we had no water in the desert, and I was panicking. I was full panic. We had 5 miles to walk until we knew there was water, but I was already like, ugh. And then very fortunately, there was a guy doing what they call trail magic, or just like he supported the trail. He wanted to set up something on the side and help out hikers coming through. Usually they do it kind of near the start because there's more traffic, kind of people coming through. And we got there, and it was just like this gazebo set up with sausages, water, Coke, beer, Gatorade, anything we wanted. And I just sat under there, and I don't think I've ever been happier.
It's amazing, the human staples.
Yeah,
missing them.
Yeah, and same goes for like there were times when we were just soaking wet, and the idea of having to crawl into a wet tent at night, and like there was just absolutely no joy in the group whatsoever. About a group of 6 at that stage. It was near the end, and we're just so over it, and like we're gonna have to be put on wet clothes, be wet in a wet tent. Everything's just gonna be gross. And then in the afternoon for like 2 hours, the sun just came out, and we just like stopped, hung out everything we had to dry, and it all dried up, and we were again just over the moon.
That's an interesting concept, because it's actually something in a similar kind of angle that I've been thinking about. So we got quite sick after coming back from Budapest, and all I wanted was to be healthy again. And I wondered, like, how do you take that mindset of that gratitude for health once you're healthy again and always apply it? Like, do you find that perspective of like, oh man, I just want to be able to dry my stuff out, and only worrying about such a simple thing, is that still a mindset? Or like, are you still able to express that gratitude now you're like living a comfortable life in a city?
I think like the goalpost shift a bit, like something. Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. Like, how do you continue just acknowledging that? There's sometimes where I do, or there's like, even I found one of the things, I'd listen to podcasts sometimes when I was walking, and they'd talk about food, or they'd talk about being able to go get a flat white. And like, they're talking about burgers, I'd just be like salivating. I don't like burgers that much, right? But I was just like, that being able, just the ease of going to like and getting food from a cafe or or the supermarket, and I just be like, man, that is so nice. I can't wait to be able to do that again. Or when I go grab a coffee these days, I sometimes think, what I would have done to get a coffee some mornings, or like something like that. And like, it's not that I love coffee that much; it's just that like being able to access food and drinks, and
it's almost like it gives you just a little bit of perspective sometimes. But like you say, I don't think it is a sustainable mindset to always be super grateful to have water and to have food. I feel like that's just not sustainable. Like, your brain isn't really wired that way. But I bet like having that ability to have some perspective in stressful moments, or it must come in handy sometimes.
I just look back in those tough like the toughest of the times on the trail, and just try and remind myself, how stoked I was at those different points, just to have what I easily have right now. So yeah.
Mm. What were some of the toughest times on the trail? Because I was listening to a podcast recently, and they brought up the theme of just like pain, and that made me. And I thought about our upcoming podcast. I was like, damn, I bet when Ollie was walking 4,270 kilometers, there's got to be some times when he felt pain, whether it was mental, physical, but like to break it down or to make it simple, what were some of the toughest times that you
Yeah,
experienced?
probably early on the toughest was mental, and I don't know if this is a thing, but we're at altitude, so around like 3,000, 4,000 meters in the Sierra Nevada, and I've been at that height in different hikes and different times, and I always struggle quite mentally with it. I always get really like down when hiking at altitude. I don't know if that's an actual thing, but it seems to be a thing for me anyway. And so to push through in those times were really hard. I was just really over it. It was the most beautiful place as well. On the whole,
The irony.
having a miserable time while everyone else is having it like just loving it, and I'm just like this. Like, yeah, I'm just not in a good place. But as soon as we got over that, as soon as we got through that point, I was fine again. So that was hard, and I don't really know why that is. It could have been that was one of the most isolated parts as well. So the whole fear of something going wrong or risk associated with that. Like we were, it was a really heavy snow season, so everything was covered in snow, and we're having to go over passes and put on crampons, and it was all like pretty hectic and like high, high risk and high kind of high stress, I guess, in the group as well. And then other than that, I just before the end of about maybe 4,000 kilometers in, I I woke up in the morning and something had gone wrong with my knee at some point in the previous day. And I thought, okay, I can kind of walk on this is fine. And then as I continued, it got worse and worse, and some issue probably with my meniscus. And we ended up going to a town that night and staying there. And in that afternoon, I was just really, really worried that I wouldn't be able to finish. I was in quite a lot of pain. And it was a very small town. I was trying to find a knee brace somewhere. And we even looked into, I think, hiring a U-Haul, like $200 to drive to the nearest town 3 hours away to
Some
buy a knee
expensive
brace
knee brace.
from Walmart. That was like the only option, right? Like
Yeah.
if I wanted to finish it, I needed to like start thinking that way. So I was just terrified of not being able to like coming so far and not being able to complete it. Fortunately, someone in the town came that night and had a knee brace, and I used that. But I was still like I think I just took like Panadol, ibuprofen, and some Voltaren gel and stuff for the rest of it, and I managed to get through. But it was really really quite painful. It was
Especially being what you would have been like at least 4 months in by that point, probably 4.5 months in.
yeah. I think that night I went to bed and I knew that like it needed to probably, like some things just get better overnight, and
Sleep it off.
it's fine. I woke up multiple times at night and hopped out of bed just to test if it was not better yet. I was like, oh, maybe it's better now.
Like, wait, I need to be sleeping for it to get better overnight thing.
And then in the morning, someone's like, how is it? I'm like, oh, it's so good. It's completely fixed. And I'm like, I'm fine. And then like 1 kilometer into it, it's like, ugh. But yeah, I guess I didn't really give myself the option of pulling out. And I did, after that, it was pretty sore for quite a few months post the PCT. So
yeah, going back to the altitude and more about the location and the isolation of it. That's not something that I actually really thought about your journey, but I bet there were multiple times that you were super isolated. And when you're explaining that story, it got me thinking, did you have any kind of like PLB device or anything like that? Like if an emergency did happen, what was the protocol?
I had a Garmin device. I'm not on a plan like I to my phone where I could kind of text my family every couple of days. Normally the stretches in throughout. You're only 3, 4, 5 days max from a town on an exit point where you can kind of reach a road end and get a lift out if you need to. But in the Sierra Nevada, that stretch over near the John, like on the John Muir Trail, that's really quite isolated. We were there, I think we did a 9-day stint, and our packs are super heavy because you're carrying food for that whole time. Plus, you've got this big beer can to store your food in, so you don't attract bears in the night. And so your pack's heavy. I don't know why I went on that.
No, that makes sense.
Your pack's heavy.
Yeah.
That's what you need. No, pack's heavy. You're in a you're completely isolated. There is like a bit of fear that comes into that, and like I've been in those sort of situations before, previous work where I've been, where I've got that same sort of just struggle to and like worry because you're so out of civilization.
Mm-hmm. And that kind of
Comes from that too. Normally it's the mornings I worry, the evenings I enjoy. I find once I get
I feel like it would have been the opposite. You wake up feeling good, and then you go to bed and you feel more anxious. I feel that's probably a better way of doing it though, because it means you have a better sleep.
yeah, you wake up, you like you camp somewhere beautiful. You might have sleep. You're like, this is the life. I want to do this. And you're like, this is. You wake up in the morning just full of dread of what's coming for the next while. And obviously in the snow in the Sierra Nevada in that particular stretch, it was really really hard going in terms
Yeah.
of getting through those areas.
Yeah, and what did it teach you about managing fear and anxiety? Those two themes seem to be coming up in terms of like I could imagine the distance that you had to go. If you thought about that, that would probably be quite anxiety inducing, but also that fear of being so far away from people. Was that the strategies for coping with that? Like what were the strategies that you used? And also is that applicable to your current setting? You know, was that a transferable learning that you took from it as well?
I'm quite probably naturally an anxious person. So I don't really, I don't think I learned. I think I could have really maximised that opportunity to learn a bit more. But
Yeah. Was it just
I,
always just keep going? Was that just the
like, there's no
strategy?
other option, right? I didn't give
Yeah.
myself another option. I knew
Yeah.
it would be like a bit shit. I if days were harder in the morning, me and my mate to start off the day would have our tents kind of next to each other and watch. They had on we didn't have any not really was cell phone reception anyway, but we did have SIM cards because we didn't really want to be connected. Like, we didn't really want to stay in touch with anyone. We had our Garmin that we knew our family for us, so we downloaded episodes of The Office. We go through,
Classic.
and we figured out that we'd both do better each morning if we watched an episode. We didn't talk to each other in the morning. Woke up, opened each like our two would be by each other, opened them up. Someone was in charge of coffee in the little camp stove.
Mm-hmm.
Made a cup of coffee, put on an episode of The Office. By the time that was finished, the day was a bit more bearable.
Like your dopamine's up here. You're like,
yeah,
you're ready to go.
okay, I can actually face the day now. It would probably be like 6 a.m. Still, and then you just get to start hiking for the day. I think it probably did teach me a little bit about like just pointless worries, like just what am I achieving by thinking about this? I think the kind of the cruel thing is that when you're doing a hike like that, you've got so much time to think. So one of the things I did was distract myself with podcasts or I'll play games, like I'll play games and make them work.
Yeah. I could imagine with the amount of repetition that you're doing the same thing over and over, you would have crafted such a routine and like gotten to know like what sets you up for a better day or what helps you,
Yeah,
through that day.
yeah, and like I was pretty moody. I think like like it'd be like if you're having a bad day, you could really have a bad you could really have a bad day out there. Things really not go your way if you had that mindset. So
Yeah.
it was just about trying to stay and just realizing that like you will experience all those kind of all those feelings or emotions that in a day, like that it's just how it will go and that you just like keep going. But I was really determined. Now that I look back, I was like, quitting was never really ever an option. It was never. I would have, if anything, probably gone faster um, through it, pushed myself more. But that probably would have resulted in injury. So I was quite glad that I didn't. Um, yeah, I never really gave myself the option of like quitting. I would never have.
What do you think it was about you? Because I feel like if people are listening and they hear that you're this dude who walked 4,000 plus Ks, at least this is how I would listen to this. You're so different to me that like that's something that I probably, wouldn't ever intend on doing. And how do you see yourself? Like, do you see yourself as, is there something different about you that allowed you to do this and not give up? Or do you just see yourself as like an everyday person who happened to do this thing? What was it about you that allowed you to do it?
No, I'm just a hero. No.
I'm a machine. So David Goggins, right?
No, I think I'm quite determined. I'm probably quite. If I set out to do something, I will do it. I don't really like to back out of things. I think also we've got to remember I'm surrounded I'm surrounded by a bunch of other people who are also going to complete it. Like it's not a question of you're surrounding yourself by good people who are all like minded and all have that same determination, and then you don't have to really.
Yeah. Do you think it's because that you obviously had a lot of buy-in for the goal too, like financially and like commitment-wise, but also is it because it was such a meaningful thing and such a tangible thing for you to achieve?
Yeah.
What I'm comparing it to is maybe when people are like, I want to meditate every day, and then they like meditate for 3 days and then stop doing it. Whereas like, obviously you're geographically committed to doing this thing too, but you
Yeah.
just like did it.
I had posted on Instagram, so everyone was going to hold me to the word, mate. I could have not do it now. Or I have to do a big Photoshop job to
Yeah.
all these locations. No, I think the tangibility, like that for me, that's kind of important. If I want to, I want to be able to, yeah.
Does it? Do you think it's also related to? Because what another thing I've been learning about lately is how we sort of build our own identity stories and we tell ourselves these things about ourselves. Like, say, I'm a person who goes to the gym. So now all of a sudden I feel more obliged to maintain that kind of piece of my identity. So what I'm thinking here is, do you think a piece of your identity is like you're someone who fulfills things that you set out for yourself?
Yeah, it's like therapy, but yeah, I'd say I'd say that is something that if I'm invested, and I'm all in,
Yeah.
that's just kind of probably if I'm not all in, then I'm probably out. Like so,
It's like one or the other.
yeah, and yeah, and I and I know it's achievable, right? Like I know many other people have done it before. Um, I have seen people do it. I know that it's not like I'm the first person to do this. Thousands have done it, and if they can do it, then I can do it. So yeah, I was
Yeah.
encouraged by that, I guess.
Yeah, I feel that, and that's quite humble of you to say too, because it's still such a massive achievement compared to the people who haven't done it. But I see what you're saying. It's almost like not seeing yourself as like different to other people. It's like, well, if that person has done the thing, I'm a person, so
Yeah,
therefore I can do the thing.
and what makes them able to do it that I can't. And yeah,
Yeah. And do you think like maybe it's not self evident or obvious, but reflecting on having achieved such a big thing that really added a big check mark to that whole identity thing of you're someone who's able to achieve things that you set your mind to?
yeah, I think that's what I probably needed in that time. Is that I remember I think it was like early 20s, and I was like, I've worked for 4 or 5 years overseas in New Zealand, and I have done some really cool stuff, and then I was kind of going into this more like floaty career of guiding and traveling. I just wanted something fixed that could give me that I could focus on, and that could give me a bit of purpose for a while, I guess.
Yeah, and you gain more purpose from that than sipping Aperols in Santorini or something.
Yeah.
I mean, it's arguable.
I mean, time and place, but
Aperols are pretty good.
You can't do that for 6 months, can you?
Yeah. And, we're kind of already sort of touching on it, but from my very small experience of tramping in comparison to yours, I know that like it sounds like you occupy a lot of your time with podcasts and stuff, but I bet you there was time where you weren't listening to anything or you weren't watching anything.
Most of the time, yeah.
Yeah, and in those times, like, where did your mind go? Like, did you have any kind of self-realizations or like any sort of big reflections on yourself? You know, did you teach yourself anything in that time?
Probably to go back to your former point, I probably realised I needed to be a bit more prepared. In myself in some way.
You're hungry or something.
Do I have any realizations? I just wrote a note. I'm just going to see what it said because it's right now.
Yeah. I just know like...
I know, I've already said those points. I realised... look, I don't have any realizations. Like, I realised, I think...
It's also okay if you didn't.
No, I definitely did. I'm just like... I probably just kind of grew up. I mean, friends and family may say differently, but I probably grew up in that time. Like, was able to be more confident and independent and kind of realise that I could get by, and that there is far too much you worry about. But again, like we said before, with those like shifting goalposts, I worry about, and that I probably backed myself more or finished that and knew my I knew how I kind of back myself, like
yeah. And I feel like the realizations that you've had, it's hard to make it tangible, right? It's probably more of a feeling more than anything. Like you felt as if you grew up more, you felt as if you had the ability to back yourself more. It's not necessarily like you had really concrete realizations that like you could sum it up into 5 words. It's more of like a change in feeling.
Yeah. And I guess I was 24, right? In those years, I'd say your mid-20s are kind of like that. I'm still like to play my mid-20s, but I feel like those are quite formative and you get your frontal lobe that starts working. You get May gangs.
Yeah.
So I was right on the cusp of that, so that was exciting. So I think it all played. I think it all played into a really perfect time of like what next and how and what do I want to do next. And I knew that I wanted to go back into work. I didn't want to be a hiking guide forever. I knew that people were really important to me, and to focus on whether you love and whether you reciprocate energy and all that sort of stuff. Those are the things I thought about. How do I kind of live a more healthy life in terms of all those factors.
Yeah, it seems like when it's stripped back to the bare necessities, you start to, like, the things that are most important to you probably stood out the most in your mind.
Yeah, and yeah.
Yeah, and what you were saying about doing it at that age, that pivotal age, that was kind of a vibe that I got to, where like you were sort of lost, like you're in your early to mid 20s, and like I feel like you chose the perfect thing for you at that time, which was to pursue a very tangible and meaningful goal. Whereas like it would be a very easy time to like just get like a really like easy job and to just kind of like chill out and like muck around for a few years instead of showing yourself what you can do if you set your mind to something.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm someone who, yeah. I think as I said before, I like, I can't sit still for too long. So I like to do, I'm lazy, but I can't sit still, if you know what I mean. Like, I'm quite, it's a good
The
conversation.
catch 22.
Like, I'm just like, um, well, yeah. And I've always kind of been that way. I think where I've got to have something new on, I've got to try got to do new things. But, um, yeah.
Yeah.
Second.
When you thought that you shouldn't have said what you said in terms of the beer can, I want to pull it all the way back there because it's obvious in a beer can, as in the food that you stored the can that you stored your food in, not a can of beer.
Well, that's a confusing thing, isn't it? Beer can.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
actually real quick got a funny story that relates to that. Back to Yosemite, we pulled into our accommodation. That was at this place called Bass Lake,
Okay.
real like picturesque, like wooden cabins and shit. And we like went into the reception area and we were just chatting to her, checking in, and we asked like, "Oh, do you have any beers here?" Like meaning like beers, you know, like because we're like, "Oh, is it okay to be outside?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, we got a bar like right next door." And we were like, "Oh no," we were like, "No, like our beers."
Yes.
And like, so, and she's like, "Oh no, 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 we don't." Oh, but there was a couple of cubs by the trash can yesterday. We're like, okay, so you do? Yeah.
Yeah,
But
it's funny how our accent is not devastating.
nah, not at all.
Really need to now vowels, you know.
That concept of having to store your food in a beer can is very foreign to probably all New Zealanders and a lot of people around the world. So can you speak to the threat of beers and wildlife a little bit more and sort of how did that work in practice?
So so start with bears, right? You know, in certain places that there's a more higher chance of bears being active, and so in those places they recommend the bear camp, or you actually have to carry one of the
What kind of beers are around?
black bears,
Yeah,
black bears.
yeah,
Um, and they carry, so we carry these huge plastic tubs essentially that we load up with food, and they're quite heavy and they're quite awkward to carry in the pack. Um, and so yeah, but in terms of the three of them, so yeah, maybe we saw our first. Oh, I saw our first one in the Sierra Nevada, and saw it from a distance. It was fine. But, like you just kind of learn that you got to shout or make them aware that you're coming, so that you don't startle them, because if you startle them, that's when they're gonna get a fright and react. That was fine. And then with these bear cans, you set them like 100 meters away from your tent, so they don't come to your tent. If they're interested in it, they'll go and play with it over there.
yeah. Makes sense.
Whatever. And one night we didn't have them anymore. We were camping, luckily, like around a group of people, and we went to sleep at probably like 9. Woke up to this like heavy breathing outside my tent. I only had the mesh over top, so I didn't actually put the fly on.
Yeah.
And I was like, I yelled across to Hugo in his tent and was like, Hugo's, I think there's a bear, I don't know what to do. And so I'm like, not going. I was like, what? Like, you just flustered, you don't really know. Like,
Yeah.
what
There's a bear outside your tent, you're naturally flustered.
Start like digging and you just hear him heavy footed, like go around the tent, and you're still like clapping, and like your pants start banging your pants or anything you can find, and you realise you've got, of course, that you've got fucking food in the tent. So you're like, shit, I'm in it. But anyway, he kind of went away. I was like, oh, far out, and then I like look up, and then like a few like minutes later, I look up and I shine my torch up, and he's like probably like 4 meters away. Just like he'd just been caught like by me.
Frozen.
He like he's safe to come back here. And so he, yeah, so
Damn.
uh,
Did you get any sleep that night, or were you just
I
like,
was fine. It's surprising. Like,
what?
kind of like the idea of that fear is far worse than the reality, right? So, someone got out of their team, not one of us, but like one of the other guys got out of the team, and like scared to be away of it. So that was fine. There were snakes, way too many snakes. Like I stood on a baby rattlesnake at one point. No, that was a rattlesnake. Sorry, I saw this red like snake at one point. There were rattlesnakes everywhere. They'd hide in the grasses, particularly as like we'll go onto the pavement as the sun was going down, just to get the last full warmth of the day. If you're not careful, you could easily like they're quite camouflaged, so you could easily step in one.
Is it
Um,
something that you would get complacent about? Like I feel like maybe for the first few days, all I would be thinking about is like all the stuff that could kill me, you
yeah,
know. But then like eventually, like oh well, you know, is that something that did you find yourself getting complacent with that kind of stuff?
definitely. Yeah, definitely. I first few days, I was like on edge the whole time. I was like, I was going to sleep on this night. It wasn't really one until like this massive one at lunch once, and I didn't kind of know what they like. Yeah, it was probably my first proper experience with snake in a while, right? So I didn't really know what they get up to and how they behave typically. But yeah, no, I was always quite mindful, especially in like warmer places, about snakes. I always kind of like made sure I was aware, particularly in like long grass on the side of like year one, or would have this like app on a phone that had like GPS map that had the different kind of points where there was water or like locations of interest or where you could camp and stuff like that. And one of them was just like this creek that came down and it was like a well-known rattlesnake being there. So I just like as soon as I get close to that, I just bolt off. Don't get anywhere near that. Yeah, you do get more complacent as time goes on, and like I'm surprised there's no more accidents and things.
Yeah, and was I right in saying that you were being stalked by a mountain lion?
Depending on how many drinks I had, I might have played up that story for you. Um,
There was 10
I
mountain
yeah,
lions,
I'll
right?
tell you the truth now. So at the beginning of the early days, or maybe maybe a month or so into it, and we were hiking at night because it was very hot during the day, so it was quite better to hike at night. And it's probably like 11 p.m. and I had gone ahead of my mate Hugo by a couple of 100 meters, and he was behind me. He torches on, and then all of a sudden I just hear this like scream from him, being like, and I like grab my walking bowls, drop my pack, run back, and he's like, don't move," and then like looks at, he's like, "There's a mountain lion up there," and like he'd seen its eyes and the reflection of the light, and eventually slowly comes towards me, and then we kind of like get out there fucking quickly. Like
Fuck.
we do like a mile and like a mile, um, 4 miles an hour, probably like yeah, I can't think of that there, get that part out.
Yeah.
We yeah, did like absolutely flying down, like walk slowly at first to make sure they weren't like
Yeah.
I wasn't following. And then once we were confident, I was at the back of my light, just looking around every 5 minutes. Fortunately, we came across this group of like fathers and their sons away for there must have been like a road edge or a campsite, a public campsite near. Yeah, so a group of fathers and their children, and they had they like we walked over and they're like, "You guys are kind of like, oh, we've like just like been stalked by a mountain lion. Oh, come in, like, and they get us." And they're like,
Oh, nice.
like, "We've got guns, like we're gonna be here for the night." Um, they gave us like and then like just camping here. It's all good. We're all here. They won't come anywhere near us, and we're like, nah. So and we must have like frantic little scared Kiwis, like
Yeah.
up hands running,
You're
running.
like, what? You don't have a shotgun on your pack?
Yeah, I know. It's silly. Kind of thankful in that moment for like the
I feel like that's even scarier than what I remember the story being. I don't remember it being like at night time, and I also don't remember you guys being like separated and you having to run back to your friend who just like shrieked in the darkness.
yeah. He's like a brave guy. He was terrified. I think the next day we walked. We took a day off. We got to like a town and then we just like relaxed in the town for the night. Yeah, pretty terrified. Um, but part of the experience. And then like we looked and like actually other people had been the mountain lion spotted in that area by quite a few people at that time. So it must have been fairly used to people, which is
Yeah,
like,
pretty tame then. Had no reason to be scared then.
yeah, if it was hungry.
It'll be fine. And we're kind of mentioning your mate Hugo here. And one thing I'd be interested to hear more about is what did this big walk teach you about friendships and people? Because it's a long time to be with someone. And then also, like, it's a long time to, get to know someone and learn more about friendships. So, what did it teach you?
I think we both balance each other out really well in the sense that I said before, like, I could probably push it a bit more, and he was there to enjoy it. I was there to enjoy it, of course.
Yeah.
Like,
I enjoy it by getting it done.
I enjoy it by taking off miles and miles each day. It taught me a lot around like compromise and around the greater like I could go my we actually stayed together the entire time, which we weren't sure we would do. We camped beneath the campground near the same time, but I wasn't sure I would. Oh, sorry. We obviously both thought about times where I could have gone off or he could have gone off or whatever like that, and I think we both just realised that we like the benefits of doing it together, of being safe, of enjoying company, of having someone to share it with was so much nicer than doing that. So we're
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
compromise. Of course, there was like arguments and things that happen along the way. Um, if you're hungry, you're gonna bicker, But yeah, it was really lovely to share that with a mate and yeah, and to just to and to learn, I guess, around like that's what we're saying.
Yeah, that would be a bit of a learning. I don't know about you, like I haven't really, you know, had any tough conversations with my mates or really argued with them or anything. So was that something that was like new to you as well? You like having to have some hard conversations when you're both tired and hungry and you might not agree on something.
I think we're both pretty good at setting expectations
Hmm.
before we got into a bad spot about what the day looked like, and like, of course, there were arguments, but I could count them probably on one hand. Like,
Yeah.
it wasn't too, yeah, it wasn't. The things like what time do we get up in the morning, or like someone he was not a morning person, far less than I, and so and I would be quite set on like I don't want to be up, I don't want to be awake either, but like we're going to do this because we want to get to this town and we want to enjoy. We want to get there on time and we want to do this. So like there were times where I would leave earlier and stuff like that. But those were usually where the arguments would stem from. Were around issues like that. We both very much bonded over our love of food and beer in towns, and would like get to a town, get a cheap hotel room, go to the supermarket, buy packs of beer, um, whatever we could that was cinnamon buns, anything, and then just go back to the
Yeah.
hotel and watch TV until we both passed out. And that would be like heaven after like 5 days of walking and being absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, and I fully agree. I often, like, having done some traveling now, I often think about people who embark on these big solo traveling missions, and I just don't know if I could do it. I
Yeah,
completely agree with the mutual enjoyment of an experience. makes it better. Like being there with someone and like you're both being able to like look at the thing or discuss the thing that happened or whatever's going on. I feel like it kind of like makes you enjoy the experience more.
Yeah, I loved it, and I think like there were times where both like I wonder if we'd get more out of it by like being forced to find other like find groups of people and make friends. And we did. We formed a group of 6 at the end, and so it wasn't just him and I.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I've solo traveled before, and it's just like it's fun, and you kind of probably pushed in some way more outside the comfort zone, but it's really nice to have someone to rely on and enjoy. It depends on your goals of doing it, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you're there to kind of prove to yourself and do something alone, then great, go do it alone. But that wasn't really what I was.
Not the vibes.
Didn't care to work.
yeah. Just want to get it done.
Yeah.
And do you think those kind of
Can I just pause you for a minute? I just realised my laptop isn't charging. And,
oh shit, yeah man. We don't want it to go flat. I've had that happen before in an episode, not go flat, but had got the alert pop up, you know, and it's like, your battery is running low. Oh, shit. Put a cap on. Anyway, in terms of the friendships, did you find that going through something like that with a mate helped you be a better friend to other people too? Like, did it teach you some skills about friendship that you could apply to other friendships when you finish the walk?
yeah, probably just that whole thing around like what I think is right doesn't mean it's necessarily right. Optimized, yeah, definitely made me a better person. And that's
It's like stripping away the ego from the situation.
yeah, or like I'd get fixated on something or picture something being a certain way, and to be able to that not be the case in reality. Like, yeah, so yeah, absolutely. That's probably like going back to something you said earlier, like self-realizations. That would probably be one of the major ones.
Yeah. Well, one of the last topics I'm keen to delve into with you is the idea of stamina. So, doing this thing for 5 months takes a lot of stamina. And I see that being sort of two parts, mental and physical, because you don't want to give up. You have to be in it for the long run. And physically, you have to also be in it for the long run. So, what was the theme of stamina? How did that kind of tie into your journey?
Well, I don't know how this relates, but when I pictured the PCT and when I planned for it and bought the gear, went to, spent thousands on gear and research, trying to find the best lightweight, everything, right?
Yeah.
I hadn't really planned past the point of reaching the southern terminus and being like, okay, time to go. I remember walking and being like, okay, shit, now it's real. Like, now I've got to do this thing. This is me for the next 5 months walking here. And my pack is fucking heavy. Like, my pack is way too heavy. This is not sustainable. And that's when I probably questioned my stamina a lot. I was like, oh, how am I going to get through this? So I think mentally wise, like I could push myself so much further than I thought I could. It was one day we wanted to reach a lodge, the Timberland Lodge of Mount Hood in Oregon. And to get there for the breakfast that morning, which was like a buffet breakfast, we had to do 80 kilometres the night before.
Oof. Overnight, 80 Ks overnight.
We started at like 10 a.m. in the morning, and then we got up, and then we started walking. So it's like, sorry, that makes sense. We started at 9 a.m. in the morning. Started walking, did 20 miles by like 2 p.m. Oh, no, like 4 p.m. And then had lunch, and then we both were like, are we going to do this? Like, this is going to be us. And we like, yeah, we should do it. And so we just did it. Like, yeah, it was tough for people who were grumpy and like the last few of it, like it was uphill. Like, it's not just like 80K, it's it's hugely hilly. Got there at 2 a.m. in the morning, breakfast starts at 6 a.m., slept under a ski lift. And our flat beds in the middle of like a parking lot thing, and then made the breakfast in the morning. So you just push yourself and you just got to keep going. There's always like a goal or something to achieve along the way. Like you think that as a big goal, but when you go by day, and I think it became actually, and this kind of contradicts what I've said before, but it became far less about completing it. I did feel like at the end, like although the knee thing sucked, if I didn't do it, if I didn't complete it, like it wasn't really. That's very cliche, but like it really didn't become about that at the end. It, like yeah, yeah.
What was it like actually finishing it? Because there's this whole idea, or like a theory of like, you work towards this event and then you get like post comp blues,
Yeah,
where you've worked so hard for the thing and then the thing actually comes to fruition and finishes. What was it like actually stepping across that line and no longer having that goal day to day?
I was ready for it to be over. The last night was negative 14 degrees and we were standing on snow. I had a bottle of champagne tucked in my sleeping bag so I could breathe overnight. I froze. I had 5 pairs of socks on. I was miserable. Didn't sleep at all. It was just so cold. I wrapped myself in my sleeping bag but then run out of oxygen in my sleeping bag, so wake up like trying to like get air. So that day was quite sad.
Yeah.
We got up. We had a really short day compared to other days. We knew we were finishing on about 16 miles that day, um, and so we took it in the heat and we stopped at all these places, and like would regularly like have snack breaks and stuff. And then like I just turned up to one snack break and then like just like burst into tears because I was like, just turned to me. I was like, I love snack breaks. Like pretty tired. I was pretty over it. So I yeah, I was ready for it to be done. And when we reached, you could see on the map we were becoming closer and closer to the end. And it didn't really, it felt like an end of a day, but it didn't really feel like the end of the whole thing. Yeah, weird. I haven't really thought about it too much. I think it was quite, as I said, I was pretty really finished it, but I think other guys found it. I was with a group of 6 and we would finish it together.
Yeah.
And I think I think a few of them found it really, really hard and emotional.
Yeah.
I was since lucky that I was going back to New Zealand to work with my mate. Yeah.
True. I could just imagine you're like all of a sudden confronted with reality. Like you're in this bubble for like 5 months where it's just about hiking the PCT, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, we're back into the normal world again. We have to
Yeah,
face this reality.
and like you can get away. Like we were stinky, we looked awful. Like you can't really get away with that in the real world. So it was kind of
Nah.
in Vancouver. Yeah, it was sad. Like I think we all got a hotel room that night, and then went to Vancouver. Pretty much all of us went to Vancouver the next day and out there for a bit. They've had another night there, but yeah, it felt very low mood. From memory, it wasn't this big stuff like we were finished. I mean,
Yeah.
it was, but then like it was quite sad. And then actually, I got on the plane to go back to San Diego to visit some friends. And I just looked in my wallet and I had like supermarkets became so meaningful because it represented food and hope.
Yeah.
I had like I hadn't really expressed like too much probably emotion at that point. I got my supermarket. I found my like supermarket card, my like pub card or whatever it was, and then just started crying on the plane.
Oh man.
Like real upset that I wouldn't be able to go in with that same level of hunger into like a supermarket over there again. And yeah, it was weird. I think like the next few months after that were quite strange because we'd kind of become known for something you would we'd become known like those guys who did that, and of course we working still with like in the hiking.
It's like a big piece of your identity.
Area, and like people would ask all these questions about it, and it would be kind of hard to explain. But again, like it all sounds a little bit dramatic because if you obviously like a huge privilege to be able to be in the position to do that and to and to complete it. And then we went into like lockdown and COVID and everything like that. So,
The exact opposite of what you were just doing.
yeah,
That's
so
wild, man.
I was like, I think I didn't actually mind that. I mean,
Yeah.
COVID was horrible for so many people, but just being able to be kind of still and be forced to be kind of still was kind of quite nice for a while.
Yeah, I could imagine the element of finding it difficult to relate to people once you come back. I don't know if I want to say confronting, but I could imagine it would be quite strange. Like even like for the slightest example of us living in the UK now, and if you go home and you talk to people who haven't lived in the UK, it's probably a bit weird because you say like, "Oh, we went to Paris in the weekend," and like shit like that. It's just not very relatable. And so having done something like that, I could imagine that it would be kind of like a strange sort of disconnect once you got back.
Yeah, it was hard to kind of articulate those real peaks and troughs, I guess, of it.
Yeah.
It was hard to kind of explain what a day felt like, right? Things you did, but not really how they affected the whole physical mental.
Yeah, especially over such a long time scale as well. Like you go on a 3-day hike, it's so easy to come back and like describe it, but how do you easily sum up dedicating 5 months of your life to something?
You get such a sense of achievement from every day you're hiking, and I just wasn't getting that when I went back. I just was like guided like 9 miles today. That was what we'd do before breakfast. Like,
yeah.
like the whole thing shifts, and you're like, oh, I'm just not really getting that sense of like I've done something worthwhile today, even though I worthwhile was hiking. But like, yeah.
But that's that whole idea of we experience positive emotion by seeing ourselves work towards a meaningful goal. So something as tangible as that, I have to do 4,000 Ks and now I've done 20 miles towards that goal. Sweet, like, that's awesome. That's a really good day. I could imagine that you'd be experiencing positive emotion quite often because you're seeing yourself work towards that goal.
Yeah, and you're rewarding yourself for it as you go.
Yeah.
I did find it hard. For quite a while coming back. But I just look back really happy with it now.
Yeah, and I suppose that's the sacrifice for doing something so immense, right? Like you're having such a massive goal and achieving it. Like it shows you how important it was to you at the time. That negative emotion of coming back and feeling down, like that shows you how important it was to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, sums it up nice.
Yeah. To finish off, I got one more question. Yeah. Just for people who are listening, maybe they don't want to do the PCT, but they want to undertake something that's a massive goal that perhaps they think they can't achieve. What would be your advice?
Be prepared. No. What would I say? Take it step by step. Look at it. Don't look at it as a whole picture. I know that's very cliche, but like look at it as how you actually do it day by day. What it takes to do those steps day by day. For me, it was being able. If I knew that I could be warm, dry, fed, sheltered every day, then I was going to be fine, right?
Yep.
So break it down to actually what are the essential parts of that, and don't be overwhelmed by the size of it.
Yeah, that's great advice. That's fantastic advice. I rate that, man. Yeah. You're a life coach. You could start doing like keynote speeches and stuff.
Yeah. People.
Yeah. No, I agree with that, man. And I feel like that is a good place for us to call it. As I said at the start, man, I really appreciate you coming on today. I was honestly personally looking forward to this one, because I haven't had a proper chat to you about this. So I was genuinely looking forward to it, and I was intrigued the whole time, man. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on. It's really nice, and it's been nice to kind of jog the memory of those times, because I mean it's 4 years ago nearly since we finished it. So
yeah.
When I go back into those stories, it's quite nice, and you look back on that with such pride and gratitude. So
No worries, man. And at the end of episodes, I know you're not really the influencer type, but if people want to see maybe any photos or any stories of your journey, where would be the best place for them to find that?
On my Instagram, Oliver Missen. But I think I still have a video there that has the
Oh, cool.
whole time there in my bio. Used to do it when I was on Hinge, so people would
Hey,
be able to look that I was a cool guy. But,
yeah. You're like, yeah, I'm the adventurer. And what?
I'm fun. I'm cool.
Yeah.
It's still there. So yeah, help yourself.
Yeah. Sweet. Cheers, man.
Thanks, Cam.